I remember the day she sat me down to talk. It was one of those conversations you can sense coming from a mile away. You know, when something's been off for a while, and the tension hangs in the air like a storm cloud just waiting to burst. We were sitting in our living room, the place where we'd shared so many memories, but that day, it felt like a battlefield. Her face was calm, too calm, and her eyes didn't meet mine as she spoke. "Listen, I've been thinking," she began, her voice betraying a hint of nervousness. I stayed silent, waiting for her to continue, though my mind was already racing with possibilities. "I think we need to take a break." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. A break? What the hell did that even mean? We'd been together for almost 3 years, and now she wanted to hit pause. I tried to keep my cool, but I could feel the heat rising in my chest. "Why?" I asked, my voice more controlled than I felt. She hesitated, chewing on her bottom lip the way she always did when she was anxious. "I just a broken bar. I feel like I need some space, you know, to figure things out." I wanted to scream at her, to demand an explanation that made sense. But I didn't. Instead, I nodded, trying to mask the hurt that was threatening to spill over. "Figure things out? Like what?" She looked away, her eyes drifting to the window where the late afternoon sun was casting long shadows across the floor. "I don't know." "Us." "Me." "Everything." That wasn't an answer. Not a real one, anyway. But before I could press her further, she dropped the bomb that would shatter whatever calm I had left. "I don't want to feel guilty," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Guilty about what?" I asked, though deep down, I already knew. I wasn't an idiot. I'd seen the signs, even if I hadn't wanted to admit them. The late nights at work, the sudden interest in going out with her friends, the way she'd been more distant lately. But I needed to hear it from her. She finally met my eyes, and what I saw there wasn't guilt or remorse, but something colder. Something that told me she'd already made up her mind about seeing other people, she admitted, almost defiantly. Then it was the truth, ugly and raw. She wanted to cheat, but she didn't want to feel bad about it. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the anger bubbling up inside me. How could she do this to me? To us? I stood up, needing to put some distance between us. I couldn't bear to look at her, not when she was telling me that she was ready to throw everything away just to see if the grass was greener on the other side. "So, you want a break so you can cheat guilt-free?" I asked, my voice dripping with bitterness. She flinched, but she didn't deny it. "It's not like that," she tried to explain, but I wasn't buying it. "Then what the hell is it like?" I snapped, turning to face her, because from where I'm standing, it sounds exactly like that. She stood up too, crossing her arms defensively. "I just a broken bar. I need to know if we're really meant to be together. I don't want to end up regretting not exploring other options." Her words were like a knife to my heart. We were supposed to be each other's forever, and now she was talking about exploring other options like we were just a couple of kids messing around, not adults who had built a life together. "So, what? You sleep with some random guy and then come back to me if it doesn't work out? Is that your plan?" She didn't answer, but the look on her face told me everything I needed to know. I felt a cold wave of realization wash over me. She'd already made her decision, and nothing I could say or do was going to change that. For a moment, I considered fighting for her, for us. But then I thought about all the times I'd put her first, all the sacrifices I'd made to keep her happy, and now, this was how she repaid me. I couldn't do it. I couldn't beg someone to love me, not when they were so willing to throw me away. "Fine," I said, my voice flat and emotionless. "If that's what you want, then we're done." Her eyes widened in surprise. I don't think she expected me to give up so easily, to walk away without a fight. But what was the point? She'd already shown me where her priorities lay. "Wait, I didn't mean," she started, but I cut her off. "No. You made yourself clear. You want to explore your options? Go ahead. But don't expect me to be here waiting for you when you realize you made a mistake." I could see the panic starting to set in, but it was too late. The damage was done, and there was no going back. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. I needed to get out of there, to clear my head and figure out what the hell I was going to do next. As I walked out the door, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew she was watching me go. probably wondering if she'd made the right choice. But it didn't matter anymore. I was done. I spent the next few days in a fog, going through the motions of my daily life but feeling like a part of me had been ripped away. I tried to keep busy, to distract myself from the pain, but it was always there, lurking in the back of my mind. I thought about calling her, about trying to work things out, but every time I picked up the phone, I remembered her words. I don't want to feel guilty. How could I ever trust her again after that? Then, something unexpected happened. One evening, I was at a bar, trying to drown my sorrows in a glass of whiskey, when I spotted a familiar face across the room. It was one of her coworkers, a woman I'd met a few times at office parties and events. She was sitting alone, nursing a drink and looking just as miserable as I felt. On impulse, I walked over and sat down next to her. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. She looked up at me, surprised, but then her expression softened. "Hey yourself. What brings you here?" "Just needed to get out of the house," I replied, taking a sip of my drink. "You?" "Same," she said, sighing. "Rough day at work." We chatted for a while, commiserating over our respective problems. It felt good to talk to someone who wasn't involved in the mess my life had become, someone who could offer a fresh perspective. She was easy to talk to, and as the evening wore on, I found myself relaxing for the first time in days. At some point, the conversation turned to my ex. I didn't plan to bring it up, but the alcohol had loosened my tongue, and before I knew it, I was spilling everything. She listened quietly, nodding in sympathy, but there was something in her eyes that made me think she knew more than she was letting on. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Did you know?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Know what?" she asked, though her expression told me she already knew where I was going with this. "That she wanted to take a break. That she wanted to see other people." She hesitated, looking down at her drink. "I had a feeling," she admitted after a long pause. "She's been a broken bar different lately." Distant. I didn't want to pry, but it was hard not to notice. I nodded, feeling a fresh wave of anger rising up inside me. "So, it wasn't just me." "No," she said softly. "It wasn't just you." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. Finally, she spoke again, her voice hesitant. "Look, I know this isn't my place. Butte a broken bar. You deserve better than that. You deserve someone who's all in, not someone who's looking for an escape route." Her words hit me hard because they were exactly what I needed to hear. I'd been so focused on what I was losing that I hadn't stopped to think about what I deserved. "Yeah," I said, more to myself than to her. "I guess I do." She smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "You'll be okay. It might not feel like it now, but you will." We stayed at the bar for a while longer, talking and drinking until the night blurred into a haze of laughter and shared stories. I didn't realize how much I needed that connection, that reminder that I wasn't alone, until I felt it. As the night wound down, I offered to walk her home. It was a cool night, the kind where you can see your breath in the air, and the streets were mostly empty. We walked in comfortable silence, the weight of the evening still hanging between us. When we reached her place, she turned to me, her eyes searching mine. "Thank you for tonight," she said softly. "I really needed this." "Me too," I replied, and for the first time in days, I meant it. There was a moment of hesitation, a pause where anything could happen. Then, before I could second guess myself, I leaned in and kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, but then she kissed me back, and all the pent-up emotion I'd been holding onto for so long came rushing out. We stumbled into her apartment, barely making it to the bedroom before we were tearing each other's clothes off. It wasn't just about the sex, though that was incredible. It was about feeling wanted, needed, after so long of feeling like I wasn't enough. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about my ex or the betrayal or the pain. I was living in the here and now, with someone who wanted me for me. We fell asleep wrapped around each other, the comfort of another person's warmth a balm for the wounds I didn't even realize I had. When I woke up the next morning, the sun was streaming through the windows, and she was still asleep next to me, her breathing soft and even. I watched her for a while, feeling a strange sense of peace settle over me. Maybe this was what I needed all along, to let go of the past and embrace whatever came next. Eventually, she woke up, blinking sleepily at me before giving me a small smile. "Morning," she murmured. "Morning," I replied, leaning down to kiss her forehead. We spent the morning together, making breakfast and talking about everything and nothing. It felt natural, easy, in a way that my relationship with my ex hadn't felt in a long time. There were no expectations, no pressure, just two people enjoying each other's company. As the day wore on, I realized I needed to make a decision about what came next. I couldn't go back to the way things were, not after everything that had happened. I needed to move on, to start fresh. And that meant breaking things off with my ex for good. That evening, I called her. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was necessary. I told her that I couldn't do the break thing, that I couldn't sit around waiting for her to decide whether or not I was worth it. She tried to argue, to convince me that we could work things out, but I stood firm. I deserved better than someone who saw me as a backup plan. She was furious, of course. She accused me of being selfish, of not giving her the space she needed, but I didn't let it get to me. I'd made my decision, and I wasn't going to back down. When I hung up the phone, I felt a strange sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I was free. Free to move on, to find someone who valued me for who I was, not just as a placeholder. In the weeks that followed, I kept in touch with her coworker. We started seeing each other more regularly, and before long, we were officially dating. It wasn't perfect, no relationship ISA, but it was honest, and that was more than I could say for what I'd had before. Looking back, I'm grateful for everything that happened, even the painful parts. It taught me a lot about myself, about what I want and need in a relationship. And it showed me that sometimes, the best thing you can do is let go of what's holding you back and embrace the unknown. As for my ex, I don't know what happened to her. We haven't spoken since that last phone call, and honestly, I'm okay with that. She made her choice, and I made mine. And in the end, I think we both got what we deserved. After the breakup call, I remember sitting in my apartment, feeling an odd mixture of emptiness and liberation. It was as if the air in the room had shifted, becoming both lighter and heavier at the same time. I knew I made the right decision, but that didn't make it any easier. Cutting someone out of your life, someone you'd shared so much with, is like amputating a part of yourself. It hurts, even if you know it's for the best. The next few days were a blur. I threw myself into work, trying to avoid the deafening silence that filled my apartment when I was alone. Every corner of that place was a reminder of her, of the life we'd started to build together. I hated it, yet I couldn't bring myself to leave. Moving out would feel too final, like admitting that everything we did was truly over. And maybe I wasn't ready to accept that just yet. My friends, of course, were there for me. They offered their support, but there was a certain pity in their eyes that I couldn't stand. They knew what had happened, and a gossip travels fast in our circle, and while they tried to be discreet, I could see the whispers and exchanged glances when they thought I wasn't looking. Everyone had their own opinions on the situation, but no one dared to voice them to my face. It was almost worse than if they had. One night, about a week after the breakup, I found myself sitting at the same bar where I'd run into her coworker. I wasn't planning on seeing her again, at least not so soon, but I guess fate had other plans. She walked in, looking as tired and stressed as I felt, and our eyes met across the room. There was a moment of hesitation on both our parts before she made her way over to me. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, her voice cautious, as if she wasn't sure how I'd respond. I shrugged, gesturing to the empty seat next to me. "Go ahead. I could use the company." She smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes, and sat down. We ordered drinks, and for a while, we just sat there in silence, sipping our drinks and watching the other patrons go about their lives. It was comforting, in a way, to just be with someone who understood, someone who wasn't trying to fix me or offer platitudes about how things would get better. Just a broken bar was there, and that was enough. Eventually, she broke the silence. "So, how are you holding up?" I sighed, swirling the ice in my glass. "I've been better, but I guess that's to be expected." She nodded, her expression sympathetic. "Breakups are never easy, especially when they come out of nowhere." "Yeah," I agreed, though I wasn't sure if out of nowhere was entirely accurate. In hindsight, there had been signs of little things I'd chosen to ignore because I didn't want to face the truth. But I couldn't exactly blame myself for wanting to believe in something that wasn't real anymore. She hesitated, then asked the question I'd been dreading. Do you miss her? It was a simple question, but it hit me like a punch to the gut. Did I miss her? Of course I did. How could I not? We'd been together for so long that she'd become a part of my daily routine, a fixture in my life that I'd grown accustomed to. But did I miss the way things had been lately, with the distance, the lies, and the feeling that I was always competing for her attention? No, I didn't miss that. I miss the way things used to be, I admitted, finally putting my thoughts into words. Before everything went to shit. She nodded again, her gaze distant. Yeah, I get that. We lapsed into silence once more, both lost in our own thoughts. After a while, I decided to change the subject. How about you? How are you holding up? She gave a small, humorless laugh. Honestly, not great. Work's been a nightmare, and it's been hard not to get caught up in all the drama. Drama? I asked, curious. She sighed, rubbing her temples as if warding off a headache. You know how offices can be. Everyone's got their own opinions on what's going on, and it's impossible to escape the gossip. It's exhausting. I could imagine. Offices were breeding grounds for rumors and speculation, and I had no doubt that my ex's behavior had sparked more than a few conversations around the water cooler. I didn't envy her coworker for having to deal with that on top of everything else. I'm sorry, I said, feeling a pang of guilt. I didn't mean to drag you into all of this. She waved off my apology. It's not your fault. Besides, it's not like I didn't know what I was getting into when I started talking to you. Still, I insisted, you shouldn't have to deal with this kind of crap. She smiled, a little more genuinely this time. It's not so bad, really. At least I've got someone to talk to who gets it. I returned her smile, grateful for her understanding. Yeah, I guess we're both in the same boat, huh? Seems that way, she agreed, raising her glass in a mock toast to surviving the storm. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling a strange sense of camaraderie with her. We were both weathering the aftermath of the same storm, and maybe, just maybe, we could help each other through it. As the night wore on, the conversation flowed more easily. We talked about everything from work to our favorite movies, finding common ground in the most unexpected places. It was nice, being able to laugh and joke with someone without feeling the weight of the past hanging over my head. She had a way of making me forget about the pain, even if only for a little while, and I found myself looking forward to our conversations more and more. Before I knew it, we'd been at the bar for hours, and the bartender was starting to give us pointed looks that suggested it was time to leave. We took the hint and settled our tab before heading out into the cool night air. As we stood outside the bar, she turned to me, her expression hesitant. Do you want to come back to my place? Just to talk, I mean. There it was, the offer hanging between us like a delicate thread. I knew what she was really asking, and I knew that if I said yes, it would change things between us. But as I looked into her eyes, I realized that I didn't care. I wanted to be with her, to forget about everything else and just be in the moment. Yeah, I said, my voice firm. I'd like that. We walked to her apartment, a comfortable silence settling between us. When we arrived, she unlocked the door and led me inside. The place was cozy, filled with personal touches that made it feel lived in and welcoming. It was a stark contrast to my own apartment, which had started to feel more like a mausoleum for my failed relationship. We settled on the couch, and she poured us each a glass of wine. For a while, we just sat there, sipping our drinks and enjoying each other's company. There was no rush, no urgency, just a quiet understanding that this was where we both wanted to be. Eventually, the conversation turned back to my ex. I hadn't wanted to talk about her, but it seemed inevitable, given the circumstances. She was the unspoken presence in the room, the ghost that haunted every interaction we had. I'm not sure if you want to hear this, she began hesitantly, but I think you deserve to know. Know what? I asked, dreading the answer. She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for what she was about to say. There's been talk at the office. People have noticed that she's been spending a lot of time with one of the guys in another department. I don't know for sure. Viewed a broken bar well, It wouldn't surprise me if that's why she wanted a break. The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I'd suspected there was someone else, but hearing it confirmed was like a punch to the gut. All those late nights at work, the sudden distance between us, it all made sense now. She hadn't just wanted to explore other options. She'd already started. "Do you know who it is?" I asked, my voice tight with anger. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah? His name's Mark. He's been with the company for a couple of years. They've been pretty close for a while now, but no one thought much of it until recently." Mark. The name meant nothing to me, but the anger I felt toward him was all too real. He was the reason my relationship had fallen apart, the reason she'd thrown away everything we'd had together. I wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. The damage was done, and nothing I did could undo it. "I'm sorry," she said softly, reaching out to touch my arm. "I didn't want to hurt you, but I thought you should know."